I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. On this episode, I am joined by the one and only Jacki Roach. Jacki, how are you? Welcome back.
Hi, Jarrett. It's amazing to be here back on More Than Blockchain. Super excited to dive into more than blockchain.
Gosh, and we're off. Everyone, normally when I come on these episodes, I have an idea of where I want things to go, but Jacki and I are good friends, and we chat often through WhatsApp, both through a group chat, which was actually the group chat for Not Crypto Bros, a podcast we used to both be on, but just in general. We're both in the industry professionally, and we're both kind of always just like checking in on, hey, did you see this? What do you think about this? Let's be candid. So I think today the idea is to maybe take our individual chat, put it on wax, and share it with the world. I don't really have much to kick off, but actually, that's a lie. I have many things to kick off. I now, Jacki, as you know, I do media for the Compass Mining, which is a Bitcoin mining company. And actually, I recorded yesterday. I recorded with the Bitcoin media, a guy named Brandon who runs the Bitcoin conference that's going to be happening in Nashville. And one of the things that we spoke about both on mic and off mic, it was around the politics of crypto in America. We've just had the debates. I don't know if you watched the debates. Even if you didn't watch, you probably saw a recap of some of the highlights. I do actually want to get political. I want your opinions on what you think will happen depending upon who wins, whether it's Biden or Trump, basically the right or the left, and how they're kind of looking at it. It's just becoming really fascinating that the political campaigns are now caring about Bitcoin. They're now caring about being crypto literate within the campaign, when last election cycle it wasn't even a topic. So anyways, that's kind of where I want to start. I don't know if you want to take any of that and run with it. Yeah.
Excuse me. No, that's excellent, because actually that was one thing I wanted to touch on today. So I did watch the debate, if that's what anyone wants to call it these days. Like, debate used to be a very serious thing. And I think everyone's heart sank and just stopped when the golf debate started going on. I think that's when everybody literally was just like, yep, I'm done. Like, I was giving it the good old college try, and I was going to like hang in here, but here we are and I'm out. But to that point, so interesting. I've been fortunate to see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talk twice now. I saw him at the North American Blockchain Summit in November, and I saw him just at Consensus in, what was that, the end of May? And granted, these were North American Blockchain Summit and Consensus were digital asset, gatherings to a degree. So that's why they were hitting on these topics, amongst other things. But it's just so radically clear that from that debate, we don't have two people that are capable of carrying us into the future. And I'm not an ageist. It's not because of their age or anything like that. Though I do think there is a fundamental difference between people that are digital native. When you entered into the world with digital stuff, there's actually a community. Chevy Chase has a line in there. He says like, kids and the internet, those are two things you just can't knock out at the end. So, it's crazy. You have to really deeply understand this technology. I mean, even the fight about, and gosh, we can get right into this. VanEck just filed for a Solana ETF. I mean, even when it gets down to deciding whether these things are securities or commodities, the other day it hit me. I was like, we say over and over again, the media is the message. And it's like, well, the token is the currency. I mean, the token is the value. It is it's just so hard to actually be straddling, moving on from this past of all physical material things and then moving into this future that it's invisible. We don't see a lot of it. And so unless you deeply care and deeply understand the technology, I mean, it's just weird that people are like this is even a social issue, like cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's just strange.
And why is it strange? Can you go dive deeper on that?
I think for anybody, especially when my favorite thing that happens to me, and of course I'm being facetious right now, is when people reach out for help with blockchain stuff. And then I tell them, and I lay the whole thing out. I go the whole spiel, fourth industrial revolution, this moment in time, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, yeah, I'm not sure. And I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, I guess that's the strange part to me. And it is a uniquely American thing, maybe, or first world country thing where this is a choice and an option for us. And And essentially what it comes down to, I guess your original question was like right or left. How does it matter who gets elected or something like that? And I think right now, if we zoom out, we look at this global landscape, people are reconfiguring their alliances, who they're going to do business with, how they're going to trade. Blockchain is trade. At the end of the day, this is trade. So, I mean, you want to tokenize it, you want to peg it, you want to this, it, that, it. At the end of the day, it's moving stuff around the world. So I think that needs to be probably everyone's biggest focus is like, who will we be aligned with throughout this based on the decisions we make as voters, as consumers, as all of this,
It's funny you say that, and I love that you just broke it down. You went to 30,000 feet. Let's get away from the software. All this is moving value around the world, and the U.S. is a huge part of that. I think like 70 to 80% of our GDP is consumption, so we import shit and we buy it. That's like how we build our economy. That's it. Like that's full stop it. And actually on the previous episode, I try to get more than blockchain episodes out every week, but I'll be honest, like I'm in the depth of conference season professionally and personally. This is like my personal thing more than blockchain, right? Like I love hopping on and having this conversation with you because when you and I are walking through life, there's very few people we can kind of even do this with, talk about these things with. And on the last episode with Thomas Farah, who's a guy who's in Australia and he's really blown up on Twitter. I mean, when he was first on a year ago, he had, 10,000 followers. He's got like 50 plus and he's just crushing it, just making Bitcoin content, talking about Bitcoin. So he's an Australian. And I asked him, I said, what big G7 country essentially do you think is going to adopt Bitcoin or crypto? He and I were really focusing on Bitcoin, and for him there is a difference between Bitcoin and crypto, as there is for many people professionally in the industry. And he said, you know what, it's going to have to be the U.S. because it's all about freedom, and that's what Bitcoin at the end of the day is about. It's about owning your own value and being able to own your own value. And we talked a little bit about the politics, and obviously we hadn't had the debate at the time that we had recorded, but I was very interested to hear a non-US citizen say, he looks at the US, he's like, oh, obviously they're going to eventually adopt this. So the more I looked at the left and right, it's just kind of like, now that it's a campaign issue, whether it's Trump who says he's going to be all in on it, but I don't trust Trump, unfortunately, any of the things that he says, or it's the Biden campaign, which is now kind of being thrust into it. Either way, whether it's Biden or Trump, whether you believe Biden or you believe Trump, it doesn't matter. I think the U.S. has to, because if we're going to continue to consume on that level, and this is going to be the value on the internet by which we exchange things. You said the medium is the message, right? I don't see a way that Bitcoin just isn't a massive thing by 2030 now in the United States. And I'll be honest, I did not feel this way. And for everyone listening or watching, you and I tried to record 4 or 5 weeks ago. It just didn't come off for a technical reason. If we had recorded then, I wouldn't have said this. But things move so quickly that now I'm like, it doesn't matter, right? Like whoever wins, it doesn't matter. They're still going to be the president of the United States. And within that context, if we want to be something in global commerce and basically exchange value across the world, we're going to have to get into a Bitcoin standard. That's the way I feel now. And once again, this is a brand new thing. I probably never even shared this with you. This is how I'm now seeing it, because you're saying it's exactly that. It's just trade and we're just moving stuff around the world. So whether it's the VanEck filing for the Solana ETF, they're trying to give people more exposure to this new technology that, whether it's an ETH killer or not, we could get into and probably spend 3 hours on that just alone. If the U.S. wants to continue to stay competitive, which I believe it does, and it wants to see its GDP continue to grow, which whether that's possible or not, growing 3% every year eternally, we all know how difficult that can be if you understand compound interest. I don't see a way now that the U.S. isn't into Bitcoin. That's kind of how I now feel. But once again, I wouldn't have felt that way if we had recorded the 5 or 6 weeks ago when we met and we tried to record. How have you also had an evolution in the last couple of weeks, just kind of seeing what's happening with not only the way Trump is kind of pushing it, but then Biden kind of jumped on. And then since we even last kind of really talked about this stuff, the ETH ETF has also been approved. It hasn't started to trade. Where are you? Have you also had this evolution? Am I alone? And I've been blabbering, so I really want to get you the mic back.
No, I think all of that is super valid. And actually the evolution I've had in the past couple months has been a reconnecting with like real people who are going through very real things right now. For example, I worked at a local newspaper, and a lot of people in my life worked there as well. So a lot of people in my direct circle, there's a lot of things going on with the pensions. It was a Berkshire Hathaway paper. They sold to a corporation. So the pensions are being sold, things are being negotiated. I mean, things are, there's like a shakeup that happens after that stuff. And we're a couple years into it now. So, just a few days ago, a lot of conversations in my direct world were about, I can't say too much, but imagine this, picture this. Somebody said, you work your whole life somewhere. Somebody says, you know what, in order for us to keep the doors open, we need to take everything you guys have paid into the pension and, turn it into an annuity. You'll get your payments, whatever. I mean, like, that's crazy. You're 56 years old, you're 61, you're retired already. You've been living off this pension, these are really big things to consider. And it was crazy to me to think that, like, oh, we're going to sell these things and hope we can get your money. Meanwhile, I'm attending conferences that people are legitimately talking about Bitcoin being part of pension funds. Government's adopting it. Was it Wisconsin that has been like leading that? This is actively happening. This is an active solution that could be helping people right now. And yeah, we're like holding off. And I mean, it's such a strange place to be when you feel like you have the solutions and answers. And maybe that's across industries, healthcare, legal, wherever you reside. But you're like, man, we know what to do. We just can't do it right now. We just can't make that leap right now, especially where I live, in a post-industrial Rust Belt town, that we're going to be the last we were the last to get Lyft and Uber, like Bitcoin. That's a while off still.
Can you actually tell me what year? Because can I say where you live? Is that okay? I'll say that.
Oh, yeah.
Most people probably. Okay.
What year?
So well, yeah. So you're up in Buffalo, right? What year did you get Lyft and Uber? And I say that because when I moved back from being in the Peace Corps for 3 years, when I get to New York City in 2013, New York was just getting Uber as like a pilot. And I remember taking my first Uber in 2013. And I think it started in like 2011, 2012. That's where they just started in San Francisco. So I took my first Uber in New York City. All I wanted to say there was I took my first Uber in New York City, your state, in 2013. When did Uber get up to Buffalo?
It was later than that. I mean, probably. I'm trying to think if we had it when I was getting my MBA, which would have been like 2016. It maybe been right around there, 2015, maybe. I mean, don't quote me, but it was late. I mean, everybody had it but us. New York City had it and we didn't, which is ridiculous.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say, within the same state. And I couldn't imagine
and that happens all the time, too, which is why we all want New York City annexed. But
okay, that's for a whole other podcast. But just really quickly, how would that work? Would New York City just be its own? Would it kind of be like the district capital of New York City?
Like how the way DC operates, like people have like often said New York because, we just lose it. Bigger conversation. Move on.
Wow. Okay. That's for another day. They'll have their own token. So, yeah, I don't know. I've just been feeling a pretty big bullishness, and I'm not even looking at price anymore when I talk about bullishness on crypto or Bitcoin or any of this. Anything related to blockchain. I don't even look at price. I mean, yes, price is an indicator of overall mass retail and institutional attention and where they're going to put their money. But like when Bitcoin was 74,000 recently, I can't tell you the amount of people who have been kind of watching this and watching me do my thing. Friends from high school, friends from college, friends from grad school, friends from Peace Corps, friends from all the experiences of my life kind of hit me up. One from each, we'll say one from each bucket. Hey, is now a good time to buy? And then I go into Bitcoin's at 74,000 right now. I think it's going to hit 1 million. That still means it's basically 93% on sale. So yeah, I think you should buy some. Oh, I saw you just had a kid. Congrats on that. Also, your kid is probably going to live for 80 to 85 years. And if this is going to continue to take over the financial industry, putting in $1,000 today and holding it, and I can show you how to store that, probably isn't the worst thing for your child, because people often don't make decisions for themselves. As you said, people will reach out and be like, Jackie, what is this? And you'll go through and show them the PowerPoint and the presentation, fourth industrial revolution. And then they're like, I just don't know. So I feel like, at least with my friends, I'm like, hey, you now have a child, which is great. What about putting $1,000 away from them, and we'll just do that. And you don't have to think about it. You don't have to look at any charts. Let's do that when they're 18, 20, give them that amount of Bitcoin, and we'll see what that looks like. Like, that's a fun experiment you can do. And $1,000, unfortunately, now in the United States isn't really that much for some people, for I would say the middle class people. If you're making $200,000 a year, coming into your home, you can maybe put that away, or $500 or $100, whatever it is. But the interesting thing has now been, now that Bitcoin today is 60,000, nothing has changed. The protocol remains the same. A little bit of hash has come offline. The overall network security is the exact same as it was when it was 74,000. So I'm kind of really stepping away from price when I talk about bullishness, but what I am looking at is the fact that a potential candidate to be, not a candidate to be president in the United States, again, Donald Trump, is bullish on Bitcoin. He may or may not be speaking at the Bitcoin conference. Bitcoin conference has not confirmed that, but they've been trying to get him, and everyone knows this. This isn't like some trade secret. Everyone knows they're trying to get Donald Trump to come and speak, which would be interesting because I don't really think he knows anything about Bitcoin. I just think he knows that like it's tied into freedom, it's tied into money, it's tied into finance, and it could be tied into an entire voting block that he doesn't really want to shun away, because these are people that can sit on the internet, have memes, and also are the future of generational wealth. And then to see the Biden campaign also start to be like into crypto has been very, very interesting. And I think that they just basically were like, do we want to ostracize these people? Probably not. Are we going to lose people by saying we're into crypto? We're not really going to lose anyone. We only have people to gain. And right now they're both just trying to, pull up anyone who's on the fence. They're trying to make sure that they're on their team. So I don't know. I've just been so bullish about Bitcoin and crypto over the last month, more so than ever. And once again, not related to price, more related to looking at this from a larger level. And also I want to go international a little bit. And maybe this is where you wanted to take the conversation as well, but it's like BRICS are going to break away from the dollar, right? OPEC is going to start buying oil not in the dollar. And when that starts to happen, one of the best options that's secure and that has low fees and you don't have to deal with a lot of, oversight is Bitcoin, right? Or is it crypto, or is tokenizing these things, or is using even a stable coin that runs on Ethereum that has little to no fees and that can't really be blocked by a government. So what is there anything, and we could talk about nationally or domestically, I guess, for you and I stateside, or internationally, what are other things that you're currently seeing right now that are kind of like green flags to global crypto Bitcoin adoption?
So there's a ton of things to respond to. Number one, I just want to knock two quick things out of what you said. So as far as people putting some Bitcoin aside for their kids' fund or something like that, I'm a firm believer in that. I think it's a great gift. I think it's just something that you can even if you set it up yourself, you keep the seed phrase and, the ledger and whatever, give it to someone when they're 18 or, however you want to work it out or do it. But also, I can say from my own experience, there were a lot of grandparents that were thinking about generational wealth a couple years ago that knew Bitcoin was coming, that already did this. They've already started these seed wallets for their generation, for their next generation. So people have already done this. It's not unheard of, and it's not smart. So I'm with you there. The second point I wanted to make, you went from that to, what was the second thing you talked about?
I was also touching upon the fact that you and I have sat down with countless friends over the years and explained things, and yet they're still kind of on the fence. I don't know. That to me is a big thing, and that now I'm no longer looking at price as an indication of bullishness or price as an indication. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you look at price too, it's something look at the history of gold. It goes up, it goes down. There's all these factors around it. And I saw a joke the other day that said, I feel like the market is just astrology for men. Just looking at all these different figures and numbers and points and connecting things and whatever. But it is. Everything's a cycle. Everything's a movement. So I also don't look at price. I don't live and die by the markets every day. I'm a buy and hold. And overall, obviously, if you were taking advantage of the bear market this time, everything is a gain from this point forward. Everything's a plus from this point forward, pretty much. Internationally, I think, you and I were just talking about that article. Is El Salvador going to be the next Singapore? I think these places that have, rich natural resources and an incentive to keep these parts of the planet, sort of pristine if we can keep them that, and also, learn from that kind of stuff. And I'm so excited for the different types of energy we're going to see come out of this time period. And it'll be interesting also to see what's allowed and what's not. I think all of us are aware that there's been different types of energy that have just not taken off for simple reasons that they weren't the energy of choice at that moment in time. So they weren't going to get funded, and they weren't part of a, elite global team of people pushing that particular thing. And that's certainly happening right now. But I mean, geothermal probably has to be one of the most exciting use cases for all of this. I mean, when you talk about, and how many teams, I met them, a lot of them at Consensus. So many people are coming around projects that are saying, like, if we can directly mine this energy, turn it into something that gives us an economic voice, I guess is maybe the way to even say it, just like participation, like economic ability, mobility, whatever you want to say. And then we're also, teaching the world that you can power things these clean ways or these novel ways. There's just so much innovation happening. And I think that Raoul Pal asked it the other day, he said, what even is an economy? And like, we know what an economy is, right? But like, we all live sort of under an economy right now. But what happens when there's lots of economies and there's lots of people, I think that's where like the DAO is really going to see this moment. And I don't think it's going to be for a while, many years off yet. But I just see the future as like lots of DAOs, which are essentially just societies, which is essentially what everything that really manages the energy on this planet is just sort of these nebulous societies kind of around. And we're just going to have a lot more of them now. And I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's, I think it's just the next evolution. And I said this to you before too. I think like Web 2 to me feels like the stopping point. Web 2 actually feels like the place that we had to stop and centralize all this stuff before we could actually build the real internet as it was intended from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm fresh off of reading. I've only read half, and I actually left the book. I'm up stateside now, and I left the book in Columbia. But the Read, Write, Own by Chris Dixon. Have you got that book yet?
I got it at Consensus. He signed it.
Oh,
so I started reading it too. Yeah.
So jealous.
He's great. He spoke. He was awesome.
Yeah, he's just wonderful. And I think of all the people in the space that are tied into the blockchain space, he's for me one of the people that has done the best job in simplifying the narrative of why this fits into today and how it fits into tomorrow. And he does that by explaining historically where the internet came from, why it existed, why people were drawn to it, and why it still adds value today. And then how blockchain kind of sits on top of that now as this new value layer of exchange of not just value, but information, because information can be valuable, and just information, whether it's through tokenization of stuff, through DAOs, through community, creating, giving voice to creators, having people have the most important thing, which is the title of his book, Read, Write, Own, the ownership level, I think is the ownership layer, I should say, is really, really important. And so when you talk about the foundations of the internet, it is exciting to see some of the projects and how they are kind of going back to that protocol level, that we're not at the corporate level, right? It's not like you and I, we start an amazing channel on Instagram when we're cooking or something, and then we say one wrong thing, or we do one wrong thing and we get banned. And actually, I have been putting up Bitcoin content on Instagram, and a lot of it gets taken down recently. It gets censored, and there was an Instagram reel about how millennials and Gen Z can no longer afford housing because it's basically gone up like 40% basically since the pandemic, right? Not just the overall price of the house, but then the monthly mortgage rate you're going to pay due to the interest rates rising. So not only is it a higher ticket item, but your monthly costs into it have also increased an exorbitant level. And it's like, how many people in the last 3 years have increased their earning potential by 40%? Because even if you did, then you're still only at basic purchasing power from where you were in 2021. So I left a comment, something like, 2 or 3 lines about how I think buying Bitcoin and renting is an interesting and out of the box way to build wealth as a millennial or Gen Z. And it's actually something that Thomas Farah also shared. I just asked him on the pod. I said, hey man, do you know, he's got his wife and they're having a kid. I'm like, hey, are you renting or are you buying a house? Because for most people in the United States, the second before they have a kid, they have to own. And if they don't own, it's like they've gone out of sequence. And so it was interesting for him and his Australian, and Australia is also dealing with crazy inflation as well in the Australian dollar. But the point being was I left a comment on Instagram and it got blocked. And I got like a community guidelines thing and you got to be careful and all this. And all I basically was saying is people should consider buying Bitcoin instead of having a mortgage and the maintenance and the taxes and dealing with tenants even as like a real estate cash flowing property. And this has happened multiple times. So to get away from these corporate social networks, which something like Instagram, which is part of Meta, which you can basically be banned off. So, you know, you and I, we are amazing vegan cooking channel. We've been building, we have 100,000 followers and we're feeling really good. I could post one thing and get banned. To having a permissionless network where I can interact with that no matter what. There's not a bank that's going to say I'm not a citizen of a country, therefore I can't have access to, is becoming a more and more powerful idea. And I think it's becoming more of a more powerful idea to not just people that are living outside the United States, maybe in countries where they're dealing with an authoritarian regime or dealing with places that just no longer have access to these social networks. I think it's becoming bigger to people in all over the world as these corporate networks like YouTube, which is now run by Google, where creators are creating, or Instagram, or anything on the Meta suite, even WhatsApp. I think it's really good. I think it's really, really powerful. And I did not know that you got your book signed by Chris Dixon. And if you put that in our chat, I'm sorry I missed that. Were you able to share any words with him? And I
No.
pivot to that because we've just talked about the corporate networks. You weren't able to. You just signed the book.
The line to actually like get his book and like sign me. I got up there and didn't want to be like. I was gonna get a picture with him, and then I was like, nah, don't be that person. So. But it's all good. Maybe I should have, but I didn't even like, it's crazy. Consensus, I think everybody that went, it was just so incredible this year that like everyone had to like decompress afterwards. And like, I haven't even made a post about it, but it was literally incredible. But to what you're saying, you know, it's funny. I think ownership is a word that deserves like so much inspection from so many different angles. And when you've worked on international projects, the idea of ownership is very different around the world. Like there's very different way, you know, some people and groups of people believe we can't own anything at all. Like it's not even humanly possible to own anything on like on a deeper level or spiritual level or something like that. So I think it's a very interesting, especially when people want to be on projects where you go someplace and you say like, oh, I want to bring this technology to you. And like people are looking at you like, but why? Like, we don't need it. We don't use it now. And maybe they're not even fully aware of like, and this isn't, you know, I'm not sitting here talking about like primitive people. I mean, like normal city people everywhere are just not aware of this huge shift, you know, happening in the background. So it doesn't feel important, but it's also very difficult. It's weird, not difficult. It's weird to adopt. Like, I think you can probably remember your first crypto transaction or the first time you were like dealing with it when you were fresh and new. Like, especially before there was any regulation whatsoever, it just felt weird. You were like, I'm doing something, but like, no one's okayed this. No one's like, but something happened. Like I agreed with that other person and we, you know, we did something here, but like no one's witnessed it or no one cares or whatever. And so it's like a funny, weird thing to even experience ownership. Like when you're not used to having it or you're used to just, you know, being told what to do. And it actually, I think that's the biggest, like when people talk about mass adoption, it's like, yeah, mass adoption is not going to happen until it's so easy that people don't have to think about it. Because the alternative would be that everybody wants to learn about self-custody. And I've been teaching it for years, and I can tell you that is 100% absolutely not the case. Like most people do not want to learn about self-custody, which is wild and crazy to think about, but they don't.
I have always said that I think crypto and Bitcoin will be fully adopted stateside. We're just going to talk about the stateside context. I think most of my listeners here are stateside. When you can open up your Chase, your Wells Fargo, your Bank of America, whatever the banking app that you have right now in your smartphone, and it just says buy Bitcoin, and it just says buy Ethereum, and it just says buy Solana. And you can just set up, hey, take this out of my paycheck. I don't have to put it to another application, to a third-party exchange like maybe you and I do. That to me is when we're going to have mass adoption. Until then, I do think it's actually still really convoluted. And you and I have been on the chat recently with Aussie and Grant, and Aussie is a big part right now of launching a meme coin. And I had to change Ethereum I had to change my wrapped Ethereum into Polygon on the Matic network, and then flip that to something else before I was able to flip that into this meme coin that Aussie is working on as a project. And I felt like a fish out of water. I was getting so frustrated. It wasn't working. And I realized now what I was doing wrong, and I was putting too much, and I wasn't leaving enough for the fee, for the network fee, all things that I used to know. But because I've now kind of been headfirst into Bitcoin, I have no DeFi chops. And I used to. And most people listening to this, or my friends, they'd be like, oh, he must know what he's doing with crypto. I had no idea. I felt so lost and so out of it. And so if I'm feeling that way, the guy here is running more than blockchain, the guy who, I've picked up 12 or 13 coins over the years, a couple $100 here or there, just because they're interesting and I want to just like learn more. And when you buy something, then you tend to learn about it. If I can't do it, I just don't even know how that works then for the rest of humanity. So you're right. Yeah, no one really cares to learn about cold storage, even though I think it is the thing I constantly say. Somebody put that up on Twitter the other day. What's one thing you think the new class of 2025 should learn about crypto? And I was like, understand cold storage. Understand, and I even need to get into this. I need to get better with Multi-Sig.
Yeah.
There's a point where having 1/10 of a Bitcoin, which is the amount I think people should try to get if they're new, there's a point where having 1/10 of a Bitcoin is going to be something that someone's going to break into your house for. Not now, but that will happen. And so you need to make sure that you have Multi-Sig set up so you can kind of protect yourself. And it's really just the best way to do it.
Yeah, cold storage is important, and definitely multi-sig wallets too. I'm sure most of your audience is familiar, but if you're not, you should look up multi-sig, multi-signature wallets. Gnosis was a big one that people used for a long time, and that was kind of one of the premier ones. But actually, I'm going on a show next month to talk with a woman, Nikki Weiss. She's a colleague. She does blockchain project management and a host of other things. But she actually has a side project. She has an app. It's called My Final Playbook. And it's all these things you want to do and have ready for your family members and that, as you approach your final days on this planet or whatever. But one of the things she reached out to me about was digital asset custody and what happens, how do you put this in a will? How do you put this in? And of course, there's financial people that are niching in this and that. But if it is somebody that's self-custody, I think it would be, it's going to be more common as we move forward that as spouses even, you're going to have things in a multi-sig wallet. And all multi-sig does is basically, it has to be so many people, however many on the wallet, vote to approve this transaction. So you can't get something out of a wallet unless it hits that threshold of 50%, 60%, or however many people or percentage you want to vote to allow that thing to go or whatever. So that's a perfect setup for a family account. And it's another way. I think what humans are being forced to do right now, and it's so funny because in the technology world, we've been doing this for a long time with meta tags and labeling things and folders and like all of this stuff. Like I was a pre-press technician for the first half of my career, and that was literally taking digital files so that they had to go to all these other places so that they could be like reproduced. And it was naming conventions, all that stuff was so important. And we're in a world now where like everyone's asking for that, like I have the ability to program my money and program things to do things, but I actually have to put those things into terms and words and execute certain functions and things like that. So, again, I think it goes back to that conversation we were having, that do people really want to be owners of their assets? Because there's just so much, it's funny, like people think ownership is freedom, but what's that quote? Like the things we own begin to own us. So, it's just when you own things, you have to take care of them. You have to maintain them. You have to think about them. You have to I don't know. It's just funny. Everyone thinks everything is just like set it and forget it. And it's not.
Yeah. I think about the line from Biggie Smalls, more money, more problems all the time. And I think if I could rewrite it, it would be more things, more problems. Because I think you can have a crap ton of money and be living on an island and not have to think about anything because you own the island and you have everything set up and you have nothing to maintain. But I think it's more things, more problems. And I don't know. That's just me looking at like my friends in the suburbs who now own a lot of stuff. You know, they've got a couple kids, they've got a couple car leases, they've got this massive house now, 2,500 plus square feet that they have to maintain. They've got a shoe collection because they're sneakerheads. They've got all these other trinkets because they have money and they make money, and now they have all this stuff, and it's almost like, I don't know. So anyways, maybe the more things, more problems, if you're thinking of it that way. And that's where I think Bitcoin actually is very interesting, because I think that there's about to be an entire generation of people that are going to have most of their wealth in something digital. And that's never, ever, ever happened. You know, there was a Forbes stat that came out in 2022. And I remember because I was joining Mercy Corps to help them out with crypto philanthropy. And we looked at this and it was crazy because nonprofits are really trying to figure out how they can stay ahead of this. And basically they're realizing the boomers are going to have this trillions of dollars of wealth transfer to Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. And so they're trying to understand, what are millennials and Gen Z and Gen X? Where are they going to put their wealth, right? If they're going to get trillions of dollars, then where are they going to put that wealth? And it's going to be fascinating to think that Gen Z and definitely Gen Alpha, these are going to be generations which may have a majority of their wealth tied into things you can't touch, the intangible. And the stat from that Forbes article that we looked at was that by 2030, 20% of billionaires are going to have made their billionaire status vis-a-vis crypto, which doesn't surprise maybe you or I, but I think it's a very surprising fact to think that 1 out of 5 billionaires by 2030 will have got there vis-a-vis crypto, vis-a-vis Bitcoin, vis-a-vis investing and spending time learning about this new technology. And I bring that up once again because I do think we're moving into a place where all the value is going to be digital. It's not going to be about how much land you own necessarily, which has kind of been the way that we've looked at wealth and value maybe since the beginning of time. You know, I have my land and you work on my land, right? Or I'm a pharaoh and I own all this and you're my slaves. But it's all tied back to land. For the first time, we're having a separation of wealth away from land, which I think is going to be a very interesting thing. And not just land, but physical things. And I've been thinking about that a lot because I think in the past, it was really obvious to kind of tell who was super wealthy. You know, you would go to a stadium. Even if you go, you know, even if we're still spending billions of dollars in marketing to put names on physical stadiums, you know, Gillette Stadium here in Foxborough, Massachusetts, where the Patriots played, right? They had no problem dumping in that money for a long term when Tom Brady was running the Patriots, and all eyes in the NFL were constantly on this team for about 20 years. If you look at any of the big stadiums, I was just in MetLife down in New Jersey for a Copa America game, the regional soccer tournament, and I got to see Lionel Messi. MetLife pays, I don't know, hundreds of millions probably over the lifetime of that. And I just think in the future, I don't know what's going to happen because no longer, I don't know, we may live in a world, and now we're kind of going to actually get into the metaverse, which is where that was the one thing I wanted to ask you about. In the future, are we going to be paying millions of dollars for naming rights of a stadium in the metaverse? And I ask this once again because I think that the metaverse has been one of the narratives that has kind of was big in the last cycle, but I have not heard it as much going into this cycle. There have been other narratives that are kind of pulling ahead. You've already touched upon one of them, the energy, right? Where are we going to get the energy from? Could people become basically sovereign citizens just by getting geothermal to run a couple ASICs in their house, store some of the energy, I don't know, in a Tesla battery that they have in their house, get that money, and then now they can live life. Like that's kind of a crazy future. But I wanted to go to the metaverse because the metaverse is something you and I spoke about a lot probably in the past, but I feel like we've maybe not spoken about it as much as other things have kind of come. But now as I'm talking about the digital losing its value hold maybe on future generations, the digital gaining more value as the physical is losing value for future generations. What are you thinking about for the metaverse into this next bull run? Will it be back? Is this a software hardware conundrum where we have maybe the software to do it, but we don't have the goggles, and you know, Apple Vision has tried? What do you think?
I don't think we have the demand right now. I think
Okay.
like globally, we're just not like, there's like heavy stuff going on everywhere. Like very few people have the luxury to be like, I just wanted to slap my Oculus on and do a quick meditation session and whatever. And bless the people who do. And like I've done one and they're fun and everything. But I kind of look at metaverse, the term itself, almost like I look at Bitcoin, right? It's like a term and everyone knows it, but underneath it is technology that's fundamentally changing how we interact with each other, with our material world, with all of these things. So it's the same thing with the metaverse. I think the metaverse right now is like and there's many different metaverses, many different builders, many different, all that stuff, many different blockchains, blah, 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 many different types of metaverses. But what they're all trying to figure out, the root of it, like if you think of the root of Bitcoin is blockchain, which is decentralized storage and nodes that secure one another. I mean, it's pretty basic what it actually does. And so the metaverse needs to be the new brick and mortar. It needs to be a touch point for people to transact, trade. What they're building right now, I think can be blown out into augmented reality, extended reality, virtual reality. So I think everything that's being built is actually going to like seamlessly start to integrate with our material world via billboards, interactive displays. I mean, you even look at what Vegas has just done with the Sphere. I was watching the NHL draft the other day and they were live from the Sphere. And I mean, it was like crazy because I was just at the Sphere a few weeks ago. And like, it's nuts. When you drive up, you're just seeing, you're a person on the strip or whatever, and you're just seeing this whole thing. What everybody inside that building is seeing is being like broadcast on the outside or whatever. And I was looking at it, and when you go in, they explain exactly how they set up all the lights to project all these images so that it builds this experience, whatever. And again, going back to my pre-press days, I'm thinking to myself, somebody received like an MP3 file or an MP4 file and like had to configure that to display on probably billions of lenses and, all this stuff. And I was just like, wow, like, and then think of all the math that had to go into that, all the angles. And if you sit here and if you sit here. And I mean, so I like when you ask me about the metaverse, like the Sphere to me could be a metaverse at some point. It will merge our bio and digital ways. There'll be information that's collected from your body when you're in certain places from now on that gets used somehow. I mean, like it's that touch point. It's always just like the wallet is so important on blockchain because that's the touch point. So wherever the touch points happen, that's where you'll see funding and proliferation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up the fact that there's augmented reality, there's virtual reality, there's mixed reality. Some of this is just called, I think, XR, extended reality. Yeah, as like an umbrella. But you went to the Sphere. I'm very jealous. In September, there's going to be UFC 303, and I think it's at the Sphere. And I was trying to see if I can go with the VeChain team. I don't think I can go. Can you tell me more about the Sphere? I think it's one of the coolest things right now in the United States visually. And I think it's kind of like if you think about Europe, right, you have like the Eiffel Tower, you have Notre Dame. Just think about the physical things that humans have made. Machu Picchu, we're talking about the seven wonders of the world, right? You've the Taj Mahal, the Great Pyramids. I don't want to stain any of those, right, and their designs, but I think the Sphere is one of the coolest new things that has happened physically being built by humanity, at least in the US, in probably the last 20 years. I don't know anything that's been more captivating. Do you?
Well, I mean, you think about it, everything you mentioned before. I mean, I know they put lights on the Eiffel Tower and stuff, and you can see the Great Wall of China from space and all of that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, if you were really trying to transmit something out there, like the Sphere would be how I would try to tell the aliens we're here. Like, you can see that thing from space. What's interesting about the Sphere is that it can be appreciated, like I said, from outside and also from inside, like equally. I almost was more impressed. Like when I watched the draft on TV, I was like, wow, that's just insane. Like these people are like, just, you think of these 19-year-old kids that are getting drafted, like the largest screen in the world right now. Like it's wild. But what's really cool, actually, the coolest part about the Sphere was when you walk in, you know, it's almost like a museum. Like, so before your show starts, which I saw Postcard from Earth, which was a movie. I do think seeing a concert or something live would have been more engaging and interactive, but it was Postcard from Earth was still super cool. But like that back and forth between like a band or even, you know, I think that would have been like super electrifying. I heard the Dead and Company show was really good. So, but anyway, my favorite thing in there, when you first walk in, they have this robot, this like AI robot, and you can have a conversation with it or whatever. But it also has these like exercises that it goes through with all the groups that come in. And the one is so neat. They tell all these people to stand in this beam of light, and there's like, I don't know, 10 beams of light. And so the AI robot, depending on what beam of light you're in, you would literally hear whatever she was saying just in 10 different languages. So then she would tell you to move to the next beam of light. And then you would hear whatever she was saying in like Portuguese. And you go to the next beam of light, you heard it in, Russian, and you went to the next beam of light. So it was just, and you were just moving physically. And I was like, how are they even getting the sound into my head right now? Like it was the wildest thing. Like, I mean, I think the invisible world, and I think this is where like young people that are really into like the metaphysical stuff of reality and life and all that. I mean, you think these people that are doing sound healing and different therapies we're trying with light and just all these different things. It's like, there's just such a crazy exploration among us, but you know, the cold dead hands of the past are not easy. You know, they're not just going to like let it go. So like we're still, I think, we just have to find acceptance in between those two things. And why should life be easy? I don't know. Like, I guess the challenge is what makes it fun, you know, trying to do something new when everything's so ingrained. I mean, you got to keep, we're still here. We're still in Web3. We could have left a long time ago, you know?
We could have left. Maybe we should have left. I was actually looking up the total capacity of the sphere, and according to Google, it says comfortably accommodate 18,600, which is much bigger than I thought. I thought I had originally read something that said it was like 12,000, but like getting near 20,000 is a pretty significant size room, and I wonder what is going to be the crypto conference that's going to put up the money, or Bitcoin conference or blockchain conference that's going to put up the money to try to do something in and around that area. Obviously, Las Vegas has always been a place for expos and conferences, and they have hundreds of thousands of probably air-conditioned room to do stuff. But I'm so jealous. The sphere is so cool. From the first day I saw it, I was like, I don't know why, but that thing is so... I don't know. It's like I said, I think in the last 20 years, and people are going to probably dog me for this, but I really think in the last 20 years, maybe across the world, I want to say in the U.S. context, because I'm just not sure of everything that's gone, obviously, in the world that's been built. But I think definitely in the U.S. context, there's nothing cooler. There's nothing cooler. And they've built other really nice stadiums for the NFL and all this stuff. But that thing is just so cool. And the other thing is it's not too big. They could have tried to make that thing the size of the Coliseum. You know, they could have tried to make it so it's 80,000 people. But I love how they almost kind of kept it intimate. And the thing when I think about it, I compare it to Red Rock in Colorado, where it's like intimate, but also very, very unique, right? Because Red Rock isn't the most massive thing in the world, but it's so well known. And I feel the same way now about the Sphere.
Yeah, Red Rock's, they just had an alien sighting there, by the way, like 2 days ago. Like, I guess all these people saw a UFO
all these
or
people
something.
saw these discs or something.
Red Rock, you know, it's funny because I've been to Red Rocks like at least 5 times. I saw Courtney Love and Lana Del Rey in like 2016 or something. It was crazy. It was a great, great concert. Yeah, Courtney Love opened up for Lana Del Rey. It was awesome. But anyway, I would actually take Red Rocks over the Sphere. Like, the Sphere is cool. I will say this. The Sphere is dizzyingly steep. Like, and there's not like guardrails. I actually like was thinking about older people being there, anyone with like any type of like differently abled or anything. Like, I'm sure they have that all addressed, but it's very steep. Like, even when I was watching the NHL draft, they had like a camera up at the top, and we were, I think we were in 106 or something like that, 206. And so it wasn't like as steep there, but like the higher up you go, I mean, like, it's wild. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable, I don't think, like standing up and like jamming out to a concert. I would just be afraid of like falling, but It's way more. I mean, like Red Rocks is steep, but like this is next level.
How steep, if you could, because I've been in one of the steepest stadiums physically I've ever been is La Bombonera, which is in Buenos Aires. And because it's in the city, they made it like they just didn't have a lot of like land. And so when you're standing, for example, the person's head who's in front of you is at your knee. If you're standing, is it
That's
that
probably,
steep?
I was actually just thinking that as my reference point. I was thinking of the person in front of me, and that was the thing that stuck out was like their head was like at or below my knees. Like I was like,
That
whoa,
is
like
very steep.
It is.
That's a great, yeah, because and in La Bombonera, they have all these rails in front of you. Because if you're sitting or standing, every single row has these rails because you are so high that like it would only take 2 or 3 rows of people to fall for it to be an issue and maybe can go over that particular tier. So that is very steep. Wow. Because yeah, I was looking at that. So it's a circle, and that makes sense that it's so steep on the inside to be able to create the gradient for people to be able to enjoy a concert or a show or anything like that. Wow.
I did. I thought the images were going to be like the entire ceiling, but it was not. I mean, it's a very large screen and you're like engulfed in it, but like you definitely see like the outside of it is actually like a full screen, but the inside is not.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen some video of a concert and it didn't look like it was the full. It's a significant amount. It wraps, but it wasn't the 360. Going back to crypto, I don't know how we got on the Sphere, but I'm glad we did because I love talking about the Sphere. I just think it's so cool. And I went to Vegas in 2008 for my cousin's wedding, and I wasn't really a fan of Vegas. That didn't really do anything for me of all the places, and I just think there's so many cool cities in the United States. But now that that's there, and I actually have a good colleague that I work with there, I'm kind of like, maybe I'll go back out to Vegas just to see the Sphere. It's kind of weird.
You should, because it's attached to the Venetian, and the Venetian is really cool too. Like when you go, it was my first time in the Venetian, and so I didn't know they had this, like they have this mall in there. But like the whole ceiling of the mall is fake. It's an LED, but it looks like the sky. I mean, it looks like clouds, and it matches the time of the day. Like, it feels like you're in a movie set. It's so bizarre, but yeah, just crazy things. But yes, back to crypto. Crazy things.
Anyway, back to crypto, a boring topic compared to the Sphere. What are you doing right now in crypto? And what I mean is, not what you're doing professionally, but like, what are you trying to learn about? Is there something coming up for this bull run where you're like, hey, you know, it'd be probably pretty cool if I understood that?
Honestly, I've moved away from like you mentioned the story. Like I'm kind of away from like the degen stuff and like token swapping, like you guys were all doing. And bless Aussie, I hope this is the most successful meme coin ever. But I just like, yeah, it was like too much for me to even like delve into like do that. I'm super interested in Solana, and you know this is my favorite topic to talk about. Solana Let's to go. Me, I've been a believer. I was an unbeliever, a believer, an unbeliever. You know, I've been on the road with them. I think they have super, super smart technology that is probably more modular in infrastructure build than what I could see on Ethereum and Polygon and stuff right now, because their protocol, that whole proof of history protocol, they're like they can jump around in unique ways that obviously MasterCard thought was a good idea to partner with them with the amount of transactions they have going on. But actually, you know, after the filing for the ETF, which I think Solana is a super, super interesting file too, because everybody talks about Bitcoin and Ethereum. And like adding in, and whoever it was going to be, whether it was me, Polygon, Solana, you know, whatever. But like adding in this third thing that everyone has to think about now, I just think is like, it's brought some life back to this whole conversation of like, what is this technology? What is all this stuff? Whatever. And I think it's actually possible that the regulation will fall out, that these act differently in different scenarios. You know, it reminds me of like Schrodinger's cat or not that, what is it, the split atom experiment or whatever, that like, you know, particles act differently when they know they're being observed and when they're not. So I think crypto is kind of the same way. It just, it acts differently under certain context. And when you talk about like a fractal world that's like decentralized, like how human beings actually handle this system that they built themselves, with all these new variables is definitely like fun and interesting for me. But Not financial advice, but I think Solana is definitely the one to look at right now. I I bought a bunch in the fall, and I encouraged some people to kind of look into it recently, and I think it's got a lot of potential. And I think it's going to be newsworthy for at least a little while. So, going into the bull, it's a safe bet in my opinion.
Yeah, you and well, it sounds like you also check out Raoul Pal when he puts stuff out. I'm a huge proponent of Raoul Pal. I think he sees the forest and he sees the trees, and he can synthesize them both, and I think he's brilliant. He's not everyone's favorite because he has had calls in the past that didn't work out. He famously said, Ethereum's going to 20,000 in like the summer of 2021. It topped out at 4,500. He has recently said, though, that he has 90% of his liquid net worth in Solana. And he put it there about a year and a half ago, and he's just riding. And I'm sure he's up probably about 10x already right now on that. If he's always said that if Solana follows Ethereum's path in from 2017 or 2020, I forget, he's called for a Solana price somewhere around 1,500, 12 to 1,500, 1,200 to 1,500 this year.
So here's a question, because I love NFTs. I loved NFT communities. That was my favorite part of like any type of degen stuff I did, was like within the NFT community. I know the Solana NFTs are being pushed super hard right now, as it like Base is coming in hot too.
Base is super nice.
But I just don't know that we're gonna see the community pump like we did with NFTs in 2021 going into 2022. I just don't think, and even like, I want to be careful how I say this, but there's like a cringe feel on like NFT drops a little bit. Like some are good, some are interesting, but some I'm just like, oh, we tried this, y'all.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I still own a lot of NFTs. I bought a lot of NFTs in 2020, 2021. Yeah, if you're listening to this and you were around 2020 or 2021, you had some Ethereum in a MetaMask, right? You own some NFTs. And I wonder, well, NFTs have gone through such a transition, right? There used to be this the whitelist hustles, right? Where you had to like do all these things to get on the whitelist. And then you would still have to pay a mint. And then there was like 6 to 8 months, and I think it's still the same way today for many. They do free, As long as you're on the whitelist, they're going to just drop them into your wallet. They'll airdrop them essentially. I think, and I don't have anything to back this up other than my suspicions here, NFTs were a way to create community, were a way for people to get money, seemingly nearly overnight for some of these people. And I just think that they're going to be supplanted by meme coins. And I think they've already been supplanted by meme coins. Meme coin culture and meme coin community grow quicker. It's easier to get in and out. There's not a finite amount that's going to boost the price normally, like there are with NFTs, like a 10,000 collection. Like, I don't think, I will say this, and maybe I'll be wrong. I love being wrong. But I don't think we're going to see another like 10,000 collection like Bored Ape become something. I think the 10,000 collections that are out are already out, and they'll either continue to appreciate or devalue. If you own a CryptoPunk, never sell it. That is, for me, like owning a fractional piece of the first Mona Lisa on digital. Do not sell that. That's totally financial advice, actually. If you have another thing from a 10,000 collection, like a Bored Ape maybe, I don't know. I just don't know what's going to happen with those, but I don't think we're going to see any more 10,000 collections. I think NFTs are finally going to morph into what they should have been, which is a way for basically allowing access. I think ticketing is the easiest one. And I just think, memberships at a country club that's super bougie. That's it. It's going to come along when you buy your Bugatti, you're going to get the authentication on an NFT. I think it's going to get away from the ephemeral kind of pseudonymous communities that it was, and kind of go more into the NFT proves who you are in IRL, if that makes sense. Whereas meme coins are totally going to slide into that. Let's get rich quick. Let's make community of people we don't know pseudonymously and anonymously through Discord. That's what I think's going to happen this cycle with NFTs, which doesn't really help me out, or maybe you out, or anyone who's holding NFTs, unless you have like a nice thing. But I do think collections that launched in 2021 and 2022 are just really going to struggle to kind of get people back in, because I do think that things are lost. And this is your comments on Solana. I just think Ethereum and Solana, once they have the ETFs behind them, people psychologically are no longer going to see them as building blocks for NFTs. They're going to see them more as investments, because now they're part of their grandfather's pension fund. You know, now they're part of their father's pension fund, and their father's talking about Ethereum. So it's no longer like this counterculture behind closed doors, sexy thing that no one knows about, but I own and you don't own. And now I'm ETH wealthy. It's like, no, your dad actually owns more ETH than you do. Right. So I don't know. Thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember like for a while I was very focused on NFTs, and that's like what I went and spoke a lot about in that. And like it always came back to utility. And actually, I think every interview I ever did about NFTs, which probably disappointed people, but I mean, I just always went back to like, I think people need to separate NFTs from finance. Like, I just don't think they're like, NFTs are what run your organization. Like, nobody at a corporation is like, I'm selling my email. I got this email from, you know, the CEO 4 years ago, and he said this, and I'm putting it on OpenSea. If anyone wants to bid, you know, like, I mean, that's what an NFT just does, boring stuff that like, it just makes boring stuff easier. And it can symbolize, it can be a token for so many different things, but like why people just are like, and honestly, again, like when we go back to that mass adoption thing, and maybe my passion that's coming out right now is that like I've just seen so many people want to change the world, right? And blockchain is going to do it, tokenization is going to do it, refi is going to do it, all these things are going to do it, and then they like go in, and then they have to make this decision of, okay, am I going to participate with the market or not? And you know, any other business, you start off, you have to. Like people, especially a couple of years ago, I mean, even when Bitcoin first came out, people thought Bitcoin was going to replace everything. Like Bitcoin was going to like usher in this completely new world that's so foreign to all of us. And what would we even do? You know, it always reminds me of that Heath Ledger quote when he was the Joker in Batman. He's like, I'm like a dog chasing a car. What would I do if I caught it? Like that's what like the people who wanted like Bitcoin Island to just be like, oh no, we can govern ourselves. And it's like, yeah, I think we've done that before in the past. But anyway, where am I going with all this? What am I talking about?
NFTs.
Oh, the markets. Yeah, well, I mean, like, you know, there's so many people in blockchain right now that are truly passionate about people, the planet, you know, new ways to do things. And so when you shove NFTs, when you like round peg, square hole this, and you're like, you have to be on the secondary market. You have to make us money. Like, you're just like, feel bad for NFTs. Like nobody should be making them do things that they're like not built to do or be. Like just let them be what they are. Awesome ways to transmit information.
Yeah, I was thinking about Jonathan Blanco, who's also been on this podcast, and I will add that into the episode show notes if you're interested. But he runs a company called Nifmint, and they use blockchain and NFT technology to basically enhance a customer's brand experience when they're buying stuff on e-commerce. And if you ever listen to him talk, he hardly ever uses the word NFT. And all he does is talk about the benefits and how it's going to make your life easier. Not even that you're going to like make more money as a brand. It's just going to make your life easier. And I think that, and I heard this quote the other day, it was like, if you're, maybe it was Steve Jobs, I forget. It was one of these moguls who's changed the world. Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, one of these guys. And it was something like, you know, if you want to build, if you want to change the world or something, don't try to make a lot of money. You need to build a product or a service that's going to make people's lives better. That's basically what the quote was. And once again, I in my head, it was a Steve Jobs quote, but could have been a Jeff Bezos talking about like the foundations of Amazon. But I do think, okay, so if we live in that, if you want to change the world, like you were just talking, so all these people who want to change the world and use blockchain, and they're not thinking about how to create a product or a service that's going to make people's lives easier, as opposed to they're jumping to how do I make money? a lot of those people are focused on how do I make money first, not how do I make a product or a service that's going to really impact people's lives. And that is where I do think Memecoins and a lot of NFT projects, even DAOs, are thinking about how we get rich before how we actually do something that's going to add value into people's lives. And that's why most of these things are super ephemeral. You know, they pop up, they pump, they go for a long time. But for every single Pepe and Sheeb and even the OG Doge, there's thousands on CoinMarketCap. You can go search them. Go to under a $10 million market cap. You will find everything under the sun. I don't even know if this is the case, but there's probably a riding with Biden coin. There's everything tied into politics. There's everything tied into the most recent trends on Twitter because people just try to do them to just try to make some money. Yeah. So I want to change subjects away from Solana. I know we're jumping around a lot. Sorry, I didn't have a roadmap for this episode. I want to talk about Base. Have you engaged with Base at all?
No, I laugh because a few months ago, I decided that I needed to get a Coinbase wallet. I had never like I had set them up, but I had never actually like used one. And I think I was trying to get Ton. Is that how people are saying it? Ton, the Telegram?
Ton.
Ton. Is it Ton? I don't know.
I think it's Ton. I think you're right. It's Ton.
I think I was trying to get that. And I could only do it through Coinbase wallet, which was new to me because I had only ever, I mean, honestly, in New York State, I'm going to be fully transparent. I don't care if this outs me as like a fake or something like that. But like, if I can't get it on Coinbase, as you saw the other day, like I usually stop trying there. New York State bit license is just, it's whatever. And I know I can VPN and do all these other things, but it's just not worth it to me. Like I'm already in, I'm where I need to be. Like, that's fine. I don't need to do all this stuff to go get crazy things. But I love Coinbase. I think they're such a great company. And even playing around with the wallet for the first time seriously, I was like, man, they have education built in through the whole thing. Like everything you need to do, there's a video somewhere. They like ask you if you need help, instructions. So I like, everybody else that has this excuse, like I haven't sat down and given it the time to like play around and do more, but I want to, and it's very encouraging. Just because like I feel like I'm in good hands with it. It doesn't feel impossible to figure out. It just feels like, all right, I need to like, not make plans this evening and sit around and do this for a while.
Yeah, I asked you about Base because I've used Base a little bit just to receive USDC on Base to my Coinbase wallet, and it's no fee and it's nearly instantaneous. So Coinbase creating that was really, really quite smart. And I do think as a company, Coinbase is going in the right direction. I go back and forth because I know that after the 2021 and BullRun and 2022, they did let go of a lot of people, thousands of people. And I have run into those people in the industry. There are people that work currently at Compass who used to work at Coinbase who were let go. And because of how they hired too quickly, they then had to fire real quickly, and it does sound like it was kind of a bloodbath when they did. So I'm just hoping that they can right their wrongs, and in this next bull run, hire, with a little bit more prudence, so they don't hire like 600 people that they're going to have to let go of 800 when the market dips again. But overall, Coinbase products, Coinbase marketing, Coinbase brand, Coinbase media is some of the best in the industry. Yeah. And the Coinbase wallet is a phenomenal wallet because it's a self-custody wallet. You don't even have to link it to your Coinbase account. You can just create your own ID, open it up, just very similar like a MetaMask, and you can start to receive crypto. And it's actually the place that I go to first now when I try to onboard people. I say, hey, open up a Coinbase wallet, write down these 12 words. I explain the private key and the public key, and I talk about how if you lose these, or if you forget your passcode to get in and then you lose that, the money's gone. Right. That's pretty simple. But I am so impressed. And like you said, there's education all the way through. So we are not sponsored by Coinbase here on More Than Blockchain. That would be a fun little addition. But I do think that if you don't have a Coinbase wallet, you should download it and start playing around with it. But I wanted to ask you about Base because there's some Base meme coins that are blowing up that are, billions of dollars now, which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, yes. It's just funny because like even I don't know if we caught this on air, but I said something about like Jack Dorsey's tweet when that was an NFT and it was sold for millions of dollars or whatever. But like In my opinion, all this money that floods in when we're building new things is just people that want this technology to move forward. I mean, it's almost like a blind investment in a way. I mean, I've always sort of believed that in like the background of everything. It's just this is how we're funding this next new thing. I have some lately I've been having some like far out thoughts of how it all fits in to everything and what the likely outcome of all of this is. I mean, I think just like when you go through this ride, all of us have felt about Bitcoin a certain way. What it was going to be has changed via developer perception over the years, consumer perception, investment perception. So, I mean, I listen to people who have views counter to mine. You know, there are people out there, smart people in finance, smart people in compliance, or, you know, all of it, you know, that believe Bitcoin and all of this will eventually prove to be some type of Ponzi scheme, like will eventually prove that, you know, whether they cash out in 20 years or 25 years, or it's almost like there's two ways to look at it. Like moving forward, we do tokenize everything. Let's just say everything is tokenized. So at that point, if everything's tokenized, it could just be tokenized to fit our current financial system by the end of all of this. I mean, I think that's why, like, you know, we don't out here, we don't hear about Amazon and what they're doing with blockchain. They don't need to tell anybody. They don't need to put press releases out about the patents they're filing or how they see, you know, blockchain interacting with their business model. And so I think it's like, any of us, my best advice for anyone is just like, do what you can today, but don't count on anything. You know, you have to be involved every single day. Like I said, ownership is maintenance. It's checking on it, making decisions, being flexible, rerouting, like whatever you have to do. I think it was when you and I were talking the first time in the episode didn't get released, but I said something like, you know, we've been trying to figure custody out since the Egyptians. Like, you know, like this is not an easy, and like it kills me when people just expect self-custody wallets to be like perfect right now. I'm just like, we've had Tomb Raiders for our entire history as humans. And like, you think nobody's out there trying to like, you know, undo this technology or whatever. So I'm just not, I take everything just day by day now. Like I'm not like you know, I see all the time people are still blockchain evangelists and Bitcoin evangelists and all this. And it's like, I can't evangelize for this. Like, I think it's important to know about it so you can make the best decisions about like how you're going to work or where you're going to or invest, any of these things. But I mean, to sit here and say that like, this is the end all be all, like, no, I just can't do that.
Yeah. I often think about, you know, I'm really in the Bitcoin world now, and in the Bitcoin world, there are Bitcoin maximalists, and from maybe a financial standpoint, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. It's the thing that I really put 95% of my investments into at this point. It feels right for me. Different for everyone. Everyone needs to be on the journey. And it took me 6 years to get here, five and a half years to get here. Right. So if you're listening to this or watching for the first time, like you need to go on your journey with Bitcoin. But I often wonder if there's a chance that another Bitcoin would be created. And what I mean is another decentralized protocol that would be a monetary layer that could be created by a pseudonymous character that would be proof of work, that would involve a compute network bigger than Google's, Amazon's, Apple's combined, that could ever rise again. And I don't know. I just don't know. And I'm going to talk about religion here, but it's like one of the things my mother always said was like, you know, if Jesus Christ showed up today, and you're at your church and you're sitting in your pew and you're listening to someone speak about the gospel or whatever, and somebody walked in the back door and they started to say, hey, I'm Jesus Christ. Would we even believe that person? And what it is to say is it's like once you have these institutions, whether it's religion or something like Bitcoin, creating another one becomes really, really difficult. Now, if there's Mormons listening, they may argue with me, well, you know, Mormonism popped up like 200 years ago or something. But my point is, it's really hard to like do some of these bigger things again, whether it's a religion to, have someone who would be a Christ figure to then get a following for 2,000 plus years, or to then just, like I said, create a Bitcoin out of a pseudonymous creator or creators, have a proof of work network that is global, that is, has a hash power that it's hard for me to even comprehend and or even explain. And so I don't know. I wonder, I guess that's my question. Do you think we could do Bitcoin again? Could a Bitcoin, not, it wouldn't be called Bitcoin.
Sure.
Could something like Bitcoin happen again?
Sure. Anything can happen again. I mean, honestly, like, it's funny. I think, Jesus came out really strong against idolatry. I mean, he basically told people that, like, you will find something to worship. You will find a way to worship everything somebody else makes, instead of just like having a personal relationship with God that allows you to create and do, all these things that I can give you power to do or whatever. So the second question of, like, if Jesus showed up, would people even know him? And again, that's, Jesus had an answer for that. He told people, I don't know you. You never talked to me. You never reached out to me. We didn't. So when you ask me, like, can Bitcoin be done again, or can a cult come up again, or any of these things? I mean, sure, whatever people believe in, whatever they subscribe to, whatever they want to be a part of is what's going to be real to them. Reality is subjective. And we all like to think that there is this objective reality. And maybe that is the economy. Maybe that is the
market.
Like, for as much as we, demonize and bastardize it, maybe that is just what we all need as a species to connect us and tether us together. Maybe that is the collective memory, or, whatever, or even just the collective account of history, which, as we know, blockchain is going to enrich historical accounts. You can't block people from publishing now. History isn't going to be published by the victors. It's going to be published by everybody that was there. And, like, that's a crazy, mind-blowing concept. So to your point, I think it's still unfathomable to us as individuals, how this is going to play out. Right now, we're all born to a country. You are a corporate entity of whatever country you happen to be born in. So, like, you are expected to pull your weight in some capacity for wherever you end up in life. And that's how countries run each other. I mean, that's how things happen and go. And I think human beings naturally are industrious. We want to make, we want to create. I think the problem has just become this myopia of, like, you can only create things that funnel, aid, resource this system. We're going to act. So again, going back to, could there be another Bitcoin? Sure, there could. I mean, I'm still not convinced Dogecoin, isn't it? I know it's a different animal, unlimited supply and things like that, but it's proof of work. It's got a following. I know I talk about Doge every time, but it's for that same reason. It has a cultural following. Like, it has people that would go all in for Doge if there was some, token war or reason to do it. And we haven't even gotten there yet in development. We don't even have the rails to deploy people the way we do in Web 2 right now. You know what I mean? Like, we don't even have the Web 3 rails to just say, like, I don't know, to feed the information and to pump the thing into, like, it's so isolated right now. Like, imagine when this really blows up and decentralizes.
Yeah, one of the things that Raoul Pal says, and it feels weird to just parrot Raoul Pal on my podcast here, but I do think that podcasts are just conversations between people, and they're going to pull from where they pull. And so Raoul he's said for years now, he said, look, this is going to 200 trillion. That's the market cap, easily. And on an episode I just had with Thomas Farr, he said that he thinks because of money printing over the next 6 to 7 years, the amount of assets right now in the world is around 900 trillion. But he's thinking we're going to double that and then some. We're going to get to around 2,000 trillion of overall asset worth in the world. And he said, this is Thomas, he said, in that world of 2,000, he's seeing Bitcoin going somewhere between 50 trillion to 100 trillion. As it just soaks up the monetary premiums of all these other things, and people realize this is the most efficient place I can put my money if I want to protect it and own it. That's it. And so in that world, Bitcoin right now is at like 1.2 trillion, maybe 1.1 trillion. I haven't looked. So that's still a 45x or something like that. Like, it's crazy. never mind the entire space. So I say all of that in the context to talk about Doge. Doge is at, let me look, because I want to be accurate with this when I say this, because we'll look back one day and be like, oh, we can't believe Doge was that cheap. Doge is currently at 12 cents. In the world where Raoul Pal says we're going to get to 200 trillion, or Thomas, 200 trillion for the overall market cap of crypto, and probably Bitcoin has half of that, so that's 100 trillion, like Thomas said. In that world, Doge is $10, right? Which is about 100x from today. And that will probably happen in the next decade. So it is crazy to think that that could happen, that you could put $1 and in the next decade it's worth $100 just off Doge. But I do believe, like you said, that I want to thank you for saying what you've said, because it allowed me to see that, yeah, you know what? Anything is possible if there's a belief behind it. And I don't know if you've seen, we have not talked about this. I don't know if you've seen Dune 1 and Dune 2. Maybe you saw the old Dune from the 80s. But one of the things that comes out in Dune 2 and the overall idea is like, be careful what you wish for. Be careful of the prophecies that you support, because you may not really like how they actually come to fruition and how they play out. And I think a lot about what happens if Dogecoin is worth $10. What does that mean for most people in the world? I don't know. That means that the average house in Buffalo is probably worth $2.1 million or something. It means things have gotten more expensive. I don't know. It's like, I do believe everyone listening to this podcast will be millionaires in US dollars, but that's because by then a gallon of milk's $30. So, it's all kind of relative, and kind of be careful what you wish for. But in that world where the overall crypto market cap gets to 200 trillion, or as Thomas has said, Bitcoin even gets to 100 trillion, we are so early. And I guess that's what I wanted to circle back on what you were saying. We're just so early. We don't even have the rails to properly do this thing yet. It's like we've showed up at the ice rink and we don't even have skates, but we're all so excited to be there. Like, so excited. We want to play hockey. What are you looking out for in 2024? I've asked kind of what are the skills you're trying to get into. That seems to be, I love that answer. It's like, nope, just kind of waiting and seeing. What are other things 2024? Any conferences you're looking to go to? I don't think you're going to be in Nashville. I believe we talked about that. There's Permissionless out in Salt Lake City in November. What are other things you're kind of looking at culturally for the rest of this year that you have your eye on?
So, I'm really into the refi community, regenerative finance. I'm working on a project called Blue Carbon Farm. You've met Matt before, one of the founders on that. You met him at NFT NYC. So it's a great project. It's an interesting community to work with, because again, it's a lot of people that are seeing outside the finance world. How do we just trade? How do we have local farm to fork? How do we move things in a way where we're not, the world, I believe, is going to get more volatile. So being in a position where you're securing a network of food sources, or a network of aid, or you have a network of, doctors in some of these places, you're in a rural area, you're far away, how can you actually deploy resources quickly? And also, for a very, we talked about international and national stuff earlier, like trade, and that blockchain is just the easiest way to be immediately compliant with anything you're like exporting, importing. You're publishing to a blockchain that this thing happened, or this transaction happened, or whatever. So I think I'm interested to see that continue to blow out. And just going back to a really early point you made, and I finally remembered it. It was when you were talking about the election and just saying, right or left, how does this matter if this goes out? The funny thing is, I think we actually have to come together. The right in any country is typically your nationalist, and the left in any country is typically your globalist. And that this moment is calling for those two polar opposites that have, different agendas, different security protocol, all that, to actually come together and say, well, what does it mean to be American now? What does it mean to be born in the UK? What does it mean to be born in Colombia? And, our government, we gave meaning to. Throughout time, we've all given meaning to government. So what meaning will we assign it? What will it mean to us moving forward? And it's strange to even be able to ask these questions. You know, I think I said it to you on the last podcast. When I first got into blockchain, you couldn't even say central banks. You could not say central banks. It was like a secret still. And now central bank digital currencies. I mean, we throw it out every day. Like it's just nothing. And it's just bizarre.
It's funny you say that about, you know, most right political regimes and countries are nationalist while the left is more globalist. I was shared with this it's a White House that came out in May, and it said President Biden takes action to protect American workers and businesses from China's unfair trade practices. And one of the things that comes out here is essentially putting a tariff on goods that are coming into the U.S. to be able to basically spur and incentivize U.S. production, you know, made in America. But at the same time, it's going to totally make it very difficult for companies that rely on Chinese goods to be able to import Chinese goods without having to pay a really high fee. And unfortunately, Bitcoin mining is backed up by Chinese ASICs, Chinese miners. So it's going to be very interesting to see how, and I 100% agree. I think they both need to come together, figure out how we boost production in the United States in a way that's going to be good for our economy. At the same time, we need to play ball better with the ones we've been basically buying stuff from, which is China, for the past 20 or 30 years or most of our lives. You know, you and I were basically raised at a time and we didn't maybe understand it our entire lives, but now we definitely do. Or maybe you were aware. I wasn't, that throughout our entire lives, from NAFTA being signed, I think in the early 90s, to some of the stuff after that, we've just moved all of our labor abroad, almost all of it. Post-World War II, we had 50% of the stuff we were consuming in the United States came from the U.S. And that's because Europe was dead. You know, Japan was in trouble. China was still like kind of hidden. But now we import it all. So I do agree that I think that the right and the left in the U.S. do need to come together and find a path that both satisfies national interests, economic interests, as well as playing well in the sandbox being our global economy. Because I think it's a really tough time for any country to just become isolationist, especially in the age of Bitcoin. So I guess we'll kind of see how that plays out. Well, I want to thank you for hopping on today. We just kind of let it go, and
my lighting changed so dramatically, as like I'm like blue now. This is whatever.
I know. I was gonna say I have lights behind here. I tried to set up. I'm in Boston. I don't have my normal lighting setup like I do in Colombia, but we've been going for a couple hours here. Do you want to share where people can reach you? I feel like, hopefully I'm right here, I feel like LinkedIn may be one of the best places.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best right now. Other than being a strategic advisor on Blue Carbon Farm, I'm sort of in between gigs and just taking this minute to recalibrate myself. I do want to give a quick shout out though. So Brian Naughton is how I even met you guys, and his posts, his articles, he has a Substack. He's just a phenomenal writer. I love his take on things. It's just so intelligent, smart, interconnected. So please check out Brian. In fact, I'll probably give you, instead of like, I'm promoting nothing right now. So like, let's just promote Brian's Substack.
I will leave Brian's Substack in this episode, and I'll also leave the episode that he and I did on Memecoins, which was based off of the Memecoin article.
It's such a good episode.
His Memecoin article, were you able to read that? It was
his article and your guys' episode. It's really good.
I need to pull some more clips from that episode. So this is a good reminder, because he's one of the most well thought people in crypto that isn't at 1 million followers on Twitter. And I've told him this time and time again. He sees it on the same level as, like, his synthesis is on the same level as Kathy Wood or Raoul Paul. Say it on mic. But that's just how the internet is. And actually, I sent Grant an audio earlier this morning because, you know, our mutual friend Grant Sparks, he's been grinding, he's been creating stuff, and I sent him an audio from Tyler the Creator. Tyler the Creator is a rapper, if you're unaware, but he was on a podcast or something, and Tyler the Creator said, "Look, you never know who's listening. You never know." And he said that he found an artist, and when he found him on YouTube, he was just surfing YouTube one day. He said he found an artist. The dude had 6 views on his video. He found him, he signed him, and now the guy's like doing something. So all that's to say that, for Brian, I know he's going to have his big day in the sun, probably in 2025, because his newsletter, as you've called out, is one of the best in crypto. So I will leave all that below. Jacki, I'll leave your LinkedIn. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Watching us on podcast platforms, please subscribe. Follow us on socials at More Than Blockchain. And if you enjoyed this, please go ahead and share it with a friend, family member, colleague. We went through a lot today. We talked about religion. We talked about politics. We talked about crypto, NFTs, DAOs, Solana, Bitcoin, Ethereum. We talked about everything under the sun. So I'm sure that if you share this, there's something people can find. Jacki, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Jarrett, and all the work you do and everything that's more than blockchain.
Amazing. Bye.
Bye.